That is theory of income and employment. Please mark this in your registers, guys. All theory of income and employment. We are starting with this today. The ultimate purpose of this theory, guys, is to know, is to
Sir,
determine, yes,
which chapter does this fall into in my syllabus?
the same in which you had this national income. So once I start with the titles, you will soon understand what
Hmm.
all is there for you, right? Yeah, what I was telling guys in this, what is the ultimate purpose of this theory of income and employment is to determine equilibrium level of income and employment of an economy. The purpose of this theory, which is a part of macroeconomics, is to determine equilibrium level of income and employment. Now, what is equilibrium level of income and employment? We will see that little later, right? In different books by different authors for CBSE as well as ISC students, there are either 4 or 5 chapters under this theory, right? I am not going ahead, I would not be going ahead as per the chapters. I will cover the entire theory here, and with that, everything that you have in your syllabus would be covered. So, this theory aims to determine equilibrium level of income and employment of an economy. Now, before understanding the theory of income and employment, where we would be determining equilibrium level of income and employment, we need to understand a few macroeconomic variables. The one of them is aggregate demand, in short AD. Now listen to me guys, what is aggregate demand? Demand we have already seen in microeconomics, right? CBSE students have already seen demand in microeconomics, but since it was microeconomics there, we discussed the demand of only one commodity at a time. Here, however, in macroeconomics, when we say aggregate demand, it is demand of all the goods and services together by the whole world, by the whole world. So, which goods and services which are to be produced by an economy? But who would be demanding those goods? The whole world. Am I clear or not what I say? We also understand that different types of commodities have different units of measurement. Like food grains are measured in weights, that is in kilograms, or in quintals, or in tons, whereas edible oil and other liquid items are measured in liters or kiloliters or gallons. On the other hand, clothes, construction of roads, laying down new railway lines, they all are measured in terms of kilometers or in miles or in meters. On the other hand, we have many items which are measured in numbers, like machines or cars or bikes. They are measured, their production is measured in numbers. How many cars, how many bikes, how many machines have been produced. This is how we measure them in numbers. So different commodities, since have different units of measurement, we cannot present demand of all those commodities in one single unit of measurement. And that is why aggregate demand is always valued in monetary terms. So, whatsoever is the demand in quantities of different goods and services, that demand is converted into monetary terms so that demand of all goods and services together could be expressed in one single unit of measurement, that is money. Am I clear or not, guys? I hope you all have got this. Now, what is aggregate demand? When we demand something, we actually do expenditure on that commodity. Correct or not? Demand reflects what? Expenditure. So, aggregate demand is nothing but it is total expected expenditure on the goods and services produced by a country in a year by the whole world. Means how much total expenditure the whole world including residents of the concerned country, will do on the goods and services produced by that country. That is aggregate demand. Have you got this? Please do not chew anything I do not like. Please. I hope you all have understood, guys. Yes or no? I repeat, aggregate demand is total expected expenditure. Why expected? Because aggregate demand is a futuristic term. So in the forthcoming year, what would be the total expenditure by the whole world, including residents of the concerned country, on the goods and services produced by that country is aggregate demand of that country. Have you got this? आने वाले साल में एक कंट्री के द्वारा प्रोड्यूस किए गए गुड्स और सर्विसेज पे पूरी दुनिया कितना खर्चा करने वाली है, वही उस कंट्री की एग्रीगेट डिमांड है. This was in Hindi. I hope you all have got this. Am I clear, guys? Now, why are we measuring aggregate demand? Because it is very important in view of macroeconomics. So, it is the job of government, the central government, that calculates or determines aggregate demand. Because if demand is not there, there won't be production. If production is not there, there won't be employment and income. This all you already understand this, guys. Without production, there cannot be income. Without production, there cannot be employment. And production occurs only based on demand. If there is no demand, there won't be any production. And that is why measuring aggregate demand is very important for any central government because that will tell the government as what would be the expected employment in the economy, what would be the income of the economy, and based income is used as a base for various things like when we know the income we can determine the amount of savings. When we know the income we can determine the amount of investments in the economy. If there is no investment there won't be any economic growth of that country. Correct, guys, or not? I hope you all understand this, right? So I hope you have understood to some extent what is aggregate demand. Let me write about it. You should not be in hurry to note down this. I may change my sentences or words. So first let me write this. It is the total expenditure on the goods and services by a country in a year which the whole world, including residents of the concerned or of the country, are expected to incur. It is the total expenditure on the goods and services produced by a country in a year which the whole world, including residents of the country, are expected to incur in the forthcoming year. Just go through this, guys, and tell me whether you have understood this or not. Aggregate demand is total expenditure on the goods and services. Which goods and services which would be produced by a country in a year? Who would be doing that expenditure? The whole world, including residents of the country. And all this is expected one. Am I clear? Mansha, Amatullah, Anish, Athav, Manveer, Manya, have you understood this, guys, or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Export would be included, but not imports. But yeah, if imports are used to make the goods, obviously then imports would also be included. So here also we actually to calculate aggregate demand, we take net exports. Suppose my country is exporting goods of rupees 100 or $100, right? It means people of the rest of the world are doing expenditure on my goods of rupees or of $100, right? But to produce goods of $100, I used imported raw material of $20. So what is the net expenditure by the rest of the world on my goods? Is $80. Am I clear or not? So determination of aggregate demand is essential for the central authority, as without demand there won't be any production, and we know that income and employment of an economy depends on production within the economy or production by the economy. You can note down this much, guys. Now I'm done with this. Whatsoever I've explained that I have written here. Once aggregate demand is known, income and employment can be projected, means anticipated. We also know that savings, or rather consumption, savings, and investments are derivatives of income. Look at here, guys, all. What I have written here is that consumption, savings, and investments are derivatives of income. It means out of income only or from income only, these things are done. So once we know the income, then only we can, or the central authority can, project about consumption expenditure, savings, and investments in the economy in the forthcoming year. Am I clear? Until we know the amount of income, we can never project or we can never anticipate amount of consumption, savings, and investments. And this is the reason why the very first thing that the central authority would like to determine is aggregate demand. Note down this much, guys, and then we go ahead. Now, Amatullah, if you see this title you have in your syllabus, Amatullah, the name of that, what you have in your content is aggregate demand and aggregate supply analysis. And that actually is about theory of income and employment. Have you got me,
Okay.
Amatullah? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So, guys, note that aggregate demand is a futuristic phenomena. So, guys, are you all done with this? Noted down this much and understood this? Okay, guys, under this we have title that is components of aggregate demand. Do not write after this anything, guys. Aggregate demand means expenditure. We just talked about that. The expected expenditure. And we do expenditure, we means either an individual or a family or a society or a business entity or an industry or a country. Everyone does two different types of expenditure. One is consumption expenditure and second is investment expenditure. So we do expenditure either on the goods and services to meet our current needs, or we do expenditure on the goods and services to meet our future needs. So when you purchase clothes, footwear, television, refrigerator, car, fan, mobile phone, food items, edible items, that is your consumption expenditure. For a business, when a business incurs all operating expenses, including purchases of raw materials, payment of salaries, wages, advertisement, electricity, telephone expenses, rent, commission, that all is consumption expenditure of the business. If we talk about a government, all the expenditure which are done by a government to meet its current needs, that is salaries of its employees for the current year, interest on loan taken by the government for the current year, repairs and maintenance of government assets for the current year, that all is consumption expenditure of the government. And if we do any expenditure to meet our future needs, that is investment expenditure. You know that for a household, there is only one investment expenditure, that is gross domestic capital formation, that is purchase of house or construction of house, right? For a business entity, investment expenditure is acquisition or purchase of fixed assets, whether it is plant and machinery or land and building or furniture and fixtures or vehicles or computers. For a government, investment expenditure is construction of roads, bridges, airports, railway lines, dams, canals, and purchasing equipments, including vehicles and defense equipments. That all is investment expenditure of the government. So this is how we have different goods and services on which we do expenditure, either to meet our current needs or to meet our future needs. This equation can be further broken down into C plus D plus I plus NE. C is consumption expenditure on the final goods by the private sector. In private sector, we have household sector as well as private producing firms. Whether it is Reliance Industries or it is Suresh Brothers, they all are part of C. G stands for government's final consumption expenditure. I stands for investment expenditure by both private as well as government or public sector. And NE is net exports. So this is how AD can be further broken down into C, G, I, and NE. Am I clear or not, guys? So,
सर वापस बता.
abhi components of now you will understand this soon when I start talking about it, Tanmay. So the first component of or one of the components of aggregate demand is private final consumption expenditure. The amount of expenditure which the private sector, that is household sector and private producing firms, are expected to incur to meet its current year's needs is private final consumption expenditure. Have you got this, guys, or not? All which the private sector is expected to incur in the forthcoming year to meet its current year's needs is private final consumption expenditure. Expenditure on food clothing, shelter, traveling, amusement, healthcare, education, purchase of, including purchase of automobile items and electrical and electronic equipment for their comfort and pleasure are consumption expenditure by the household sector. Meeting operating expenses, including purchase of raw materials or goods in trade, and expenses like salaries, advertisement, communication, electricity, including purchase of raw materials or goods in trade, are examples of consumption expenditure by the private producing firms. Payment of salaries to its staff or to its employees, repair and maintenance of its assets, meeting or paying interest on public debt are examples of consumption expenditure by the public sector. Public means government sector. So this is how, guys, we have private final consumption expenditure. Okay, I should not have written this here because this is actually G and this is C. So this is our second item, that is government private consumption expenditure, that is G. Expenditure expected to be incurred by the government to meet its current year's needs is government final consumption expenditure. And now this is the example of, these are the examples of government final consumption expenditure. Got this guys or not this much? Yeah, we did this in previous chapter. So again, yeah, I already told you that now in this chapter, in this unit, we will determine equilibrium level of income and employment. And for that, again, we need to understand about this. See the difference in aggregate demand that we are seeing here, right? And the one that we saw in national income. The difference is that in national income, we deal with the past data. Year has got completed, and now you are measuring national income. Here we are doing everything for the forthcoming year, the year which has yet to come. Got this? So, guys, now you can start noting down everything from here. Oh, this you have already noted down, right, everyone? Okay,
Yes,
note
sir.
down this much, guys. Do not write this. Not government, private, government, final consumption expenditure. So, guys, our third component or third element of aggregate demand is investment expenditure. That is I. So, expenditure on or expenditure to meet future needs is called investment expenditure, right? For an economy, it is the amount that is expected to be incurred on capital assets. Capital assets are what? The assets which help in further production of goods and services, or which enhances production capacity of an economy, are its capital assets. So for economy, it is the amount that is expected to be incurred on capital assets by the whole world in the forthcoming year. It includes expenditure by the household sector, and that is purchase or construction of a new house by the private producing firms, that is acquisition of fixed assets, fixed or capital assets like plant and machineries, land and buildings, vehicles, computers, equipment, etc. And by the government sector, that is construction of new roads, bridges, canals, dams, airports, railway lines, and purchase of equipment, including defense equipment. So this is how, guys, we have investment expenditure along with examples of investment expenditure by all the three sectors, that is household sector, private producing firms, and government sector. Investment expenditure can be classified into two. Guys, please do not write it, understand this first. The first one is autonomous investment expenditure. So, guys, autonomous investment expenditure is the one which is done without any motive to earn any income or profits out of it. If I'm doing an investment expenditure out of which I do not have any expectation of any returns in terms of income or profit, it means that investment is autonomous investment by me. Have you got me what I said? Usually people do investment with an expectation to have returns out of it in terms of income or profits. But if it is not so, such investment expenditure is called autonomous investment expenditure. So investment expenditure without any motive to earn any income or profits out of it is autonomous investment expenditure. It is usually done by the government only. So when government makes any canals, any dams, any roads, any railway lines, airports, right, judiciary buildings, like buildings for legal courts, police stations, government schools and hospitals, government does not expect any return out of it. Am I clear or not, guys? So construction of new roads, bridges, canals, dams, schools, hospitals, courts of law, police stations, and acquisition of defense equipment, vehicles, etc., by the government are examples of autonomous investment expenditure. And the next one is induced investment expenditure. So expenditure which are done with a motive to earn any income or profits out of it are induced investment expenditure. Even when you are doing an investment expenditure to have any name or fame of yours, many people do this. That is also induced investment expenditure. Am I clear or not? to make yourself popular in the society, to have some fame and name in the society, if you do any investment expenditure, that is also induced investment expenditure. So, investment expenditure with the motive to earn income or profits out of it is induced investment expenditure. Private sector mostly incurs investment expenditure. Is it clear, guys, or not? So you make a new house, you purchase a new house or construct a new house, that is induced investment expenditure. Why? Because you're looking for your own comfort and convenience and prestige, right? You're purchasing new building, land, plant, machinery for your business. Again, your motive is to earn profits out of it, right, guys? So now you can start noting it down from here. I have added this here, guys. The government, that is the central authority, which is responsible for economic planning.